Alright, let's go ahead and get started. How's it going? So we're going to do a stream today. I figured I have to do some stuff for the backstory of the character that we just built recently. Just did it on Thursday if you missed that stream. Did that for a campaign that I'm playing in on Fridays. And doing a on-off with one of the other dungeon masters in my group. And so they're shuffling in to also try to run a little bit of a game themselves while I continue to run the other weeks. So we did that, got it in, played the first session. I knew I didn't need the full backstory for this character for the first session. But I figured, I gotta make the backstory anyways, and I kind of have this process and I do it, so I figured we'd show it off while I actually go through it. So, backstories are really interesting, especially if you've been a dungeon master for any amount of time, is you'll have players that are going to do basically not provide you any backstory. And then on the other hand, every once in a while you're going to have those players that are going to be like, we're going to give you a bunch of backstory. And so you're really trying to figure out, how do I find that balance in between both? So I have a way that I like to do it. I know going into it, what is the point of backstories generally for a D&D character, especially it's a little interesting because backstories being particularly important is a relatively new thing as far as D&D is concerned. And an OSR style, old D&D, really anything that's before, third, even sometimes fourth edition, but especially in fifth edition where you see this move towards that collaborative storytelling aspect of the game, and further away from, it becomes this more like, D&D is more of a platform for that collaborative storytelling instead of being a game in which there is role-playing that happens. Where role-playing modifies game, and nowadays I feel like game modifies more the role-play. Where there are lots of groups and lots of games systems now that people really enjoy that there's a little bit, not much more than kind of structured make-believe, sitting around the table pretending to be characters. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's perfectly fine. It's just not, it is not, well, generally most people would probably, especially in an older definition, consider D&D. So I wanted to jump in and kind of talk about it. So, but I think as far as the aspect of why do we do backstories, is that the backstory is primarily helpful for me as a player, so I understand more about who this character is once I get to the table, so I kind of understand how to play them a little bit. And so actually it's super helpful, I find, to do like that first session like we just did and be like, I didn't create any backstory for this. I know the basics of it, and I'll go ahead and share that now because we're looking at it here. Let's go do that. So I know the basics of him, which is right here, right? I know his ABCs. I know that he is a half-elf with the Sun-Elf variant. I know that he is a chorister, which I made a mashup of the acolyte and entertainer background to be that he was the person at the abbey or priory who was in charge of doing the choral music. And then, of course, his class is cleric, and he will be getting the light domain, though he does not have that domain yet. We are still lowly level 1s. But that will change soon, and he'll get the light domain, and we'll move into more of that stuff. But I know I wanted to build up to it, so that made sense that I was going to take the Sun Elf variant because that was going to feel very thematic, and chorister, so there's going to be a lot of sound and light and music, and also because I knew we were going to have a bard in party. That's the one character that I knew was going to be in the party. I tried to get everybody else to tell me what they were going to play. We didn't get that. But I did know that one person was going to play a bard, for sure. And so I knew it was like, alright, if I take somebody who will play music, he'll have somebody to bounce off of that with in character, and he'll be able to play with that. So primarily the backstory is a vehicle for me to understand the character, so I know how to make kind of decisions and know what's important to them and what's not important to them in the gameplay, so that way I'm not always just kind of playing myself, the things that are important to me. The second part is, of course, that it is important for your dungeon master, because presumably if you're playing a 5e24 game, your dungeon master does want your character to be important to the game, and they will be trying to weave some of that backstory stuff into the campaign. What I will say is that everything that we're going to put down on the paper today is not going to make it into the game for sure, and probably won't even come up, a lot of it may not even come up in reference with my own roleplay in the game, and that's okay. As long as I know what it is and I know it's in the background, then not that important. So I know if situations that basically tap that backstory element on the shoulder, I can bring that up. But oftentimes that won't happen, and that's perfectly fine. And that's totally okay. I was talking with a friend of mine about some previous characters we did in a previous campaign that one of my other friends was running. And we were talking about, oh, well, you know, in that last campaign, and it was sort of like, oh, your character had this big massive arc with they were doing the Golthias tree, so this vampire and this tree, and he's playing a druid, and there's all this great stuff that kind of weaved in with that. It's like, as my character didn't get a ton of his backstory element stuff sort of worked into the campaign, and he was like, oh, well, I know the DM was frustrated about that, and he wants to make sure that happens in the future, and I was like, it's okay. I always look at the campaign as a crossroad of that character's life. There are things that happen before the campaign, that's the backstory, but presumably there are things that also happen after the campaign's over. His life continues on. Because his life continues on, I know I can be like, well, then he will resolve. At the end of a campaign, he will have gained enough, basically, PC levels that he will be able to exert his will upon the world much easier than he ever could as being like a level 0, level 1 small fry character in the world, person in the world. Now, he's a big bad guy, he's very powerful, he has a lot of resources at his command. Like, he can exert his will upon those elements of his backstory that he couldn't previously. And so I was like, it's okay. I don't mind that at all. I assume that he kind of goes on a Count of Monte Cristo revenge aspect, like he has his own story that goes off like that. Like that's just not the campaign, and that's fine. And if you become okay with sort of that fact, then playing the character is a lot more fun. You don't have to stress about like, oh, how do I make sure that this element in my backstory gets brought up, that it's important to that. It's probably not going to be important. A lot of the backstory stuff we're going to do today, not going to be important to this campaign. Most of it, probably. But I do it just so I understand the character and I know them. And once I have sort of a brief of that, and then playing the character is very easy. Anything that gets kind of thrown at the character, I understand their motivations, kind of how they feel about most things, especially if it's something that's similar, if not the same thing that's tied to something that's happened in their backstory, or a relationship or situation or something like that that he can draw off of. And you can make very kind of like deep and complex characters that way without having to write kind of that 10-page backstory. Because most of the stuff that we're going to do today is going to be roll table stuff. And so let's just go ahead and get into it. So like I said, we're going to do a bunch of roll table stuff to start off. And that's where we're starting right here with the This Is Your Life. This is the section of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. If you have not used it before for a play character, I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the best things I think that D&D put out for 5th edition 2024. 5e 2024. Is this subject, as far as players are concerned, this is probably one of the best things you can get that's not just like a generic mechanic kind of stuff. It will really help you learn a lot more about your character and how to play with them. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So like I said, we've got our ABCs. We know who our person is. A lot of this is just going to be kind of rolling down the line. I should also bring up our player character because I'm going to need their stats, at least their charisma score at some point, which I believe is 11. So I don't need to look that up, actually. I am almost assured that it is either 10 or 11. All I know is that we're going to have a fat 0 in it. Go ahead. Because I know some of the stuff is going to ask for that. I'm just going to go ahead and add this in here because we're going to know that for sure. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Perfect. All right, so let's go in. So the first thing we're going to obviously know about is our origin section. We got to know about our parents. Do we know our parents or not? Nope. We're going to make it easy. We're just going to roll. It's a D100 table, but actually this could just be a D20 table, because there's only 5 points of difference, and so it's basically if I roll a And according to this table, it would be a natural 20 to know who my parents were or not. Otherwise, you do know. We'll swap it around. We'll say if I roll a natural 1, we don't know. I guess if I hadn't left it switch around, we would know who our parents were. But okay, so we know our parents. We're just gonna go ahead and put down here origins. I don't think I have marked down on, do I? Oh, I do. All right, perfect. All right, so we know our parents. Perfect. Now we are playing a half elf. We have this nice little D8. Be like one's an elf, one's a human, one's an elf, one's a half elf, one's a human, and the other was a half elf, or both were half elves. Not super important, but let's go ahead and roll it anyways. All right, 6. One's an elf and the other's a half elf. Okay. And let's just roll a d20. If we roll high, we'll say that the mother is the elf. Okay. There we go. Parents, mother, elf. Father, half elf. Easily done. Sorry about that. All right, our birthplace. Where were we born? Honestly, this is a role that usually doesn't come up very often. Like, it's generally unimportant unless you're gonna really, really lean into it. Now, if you give it to your dungeon master and they might be, you know, you're born under an auspicious sign or something like that, or you know, a little baby Jesus in the manger kind of situation. But otherwise, generally not important, but we'll roll it anyways. And of course, there are some quite strange things if we roll high, but we probably won't. In fact, I rolled quite low. So 1 through 50 doesn't matter, we're born at home. So, not really. As expected. And there. Siblings. Now, one thing I will say about this, about the Xanthar's Guide to Everything, This Is Your Life section, is that it's very easy to end up with a buttload of siblings. They really want you to have siblings for some reason. Why? I'm not really sure. They honestly don't come up very often in games. When you show up, when you're like, oh, my backstory has like 20 named NPCs in it. And like, the Dungeon Master's like, I might need like 1, maybe 2. I don't really need all these, but we'll have them. Oh no, and we rolled a 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll 2d8 and actually take the lower, because I really don't want to make like 11 siblings. Alright, well we're going to make 9, because the lowest I rolled was a 6, and we have to add +3 to that. Alright, so we got 9 siblings. So now we kind of need to know our birth order. So we got to do these for 9 siblings. So here's what we're going to do. 2d6. Alright, so we've got 1 older, 1 younger, 2 older, 3 older, 4 older. And I need to start writing these down before I forget. Older, younger. That's 5. Right. Older, younger. Alright, 3 older and a younger. 3 younger. We're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's everybody. Alright, and then we're gonna have a Oreo. We'll just stick him in right here. Reals. Got a lot of older siblings. Like I said, it's really easy to end up with just a buttload of siblings doing this. And that's, you know, the importance is kind of up to you. And kind of up to your Dungeon Master. The one thing that I do like, and why I continue to do the siblings like this, is because despite, you know what, I'm actually gonna do this. Here's what I'm gonna do. And pull this guy, and hold on. Yeah. There, my lovely face. Let me move this stuff around real quick. I need this over here. And I might as well pull up Oriole while I'm thinking about it. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, we do have a 10. Alright, there we go. So we'll swap it over. So now you can see more of what I'm writing. Look at my big fat head being in the way. Alright, so back to our Xanthos guy. We know a birth order. We didn't end up with any twins or triplets or quadruplets. Just mom and dad were really into each other. That's what we know. And we're together for a while. Very nice. What I was saying is that one of the reasons I do actually like doing all these siblings, because generally, like I said, they definitely give you way too many. But one of the nice things I do like about it as a player, not necessarily as a player, it's whatever. As a dungeon master, it means like, hey, if I have this many, like I said, a dungeon master generally only needs like 1 or 2 kind of people from your backstory. But it's nice to have this many, because if we have 9 plus mother and father, you know, we're already up to 11. It gives us a lot of options to pull from. So it's much easier to figure out which one could work into certain situations, because we'll give each one of them like a different occupation and things like that. So it'll be a little bit easier to kind of figure out how to work this in when you need to pull in some backstory stuff. That is the one aspect I like about having so many named NPCs that show up in a backstory like this. All right. So we have our family friends. So who raised you and what was life like for you? The likelihood is that one of the things that's kind of unfortunate about this is that they give you a 50% chance, actually even higher than that, that you're going to know your parents. There's a 75%, no, there's a 95% chance that you're going to know who your parents are. But there's only a 25% chance that you will grow up with your mother and father on this table. It's a weird table. So it definitely means that like something will have happened to your parents. Classic D&D, classic adventure, player character. My parents are dead and, you know, I don't have any relations kind of stuff. So they definitely leaned in on that. Is that good? And who's to say? It is a little funny that basically you're pretty much always going to end up with your parents basically having abandoned you or being dead as a D&D character, which, you know, not super great most of the time. All right, so we rolled a 63, so that's single mother or stepmother. All right, perfect. Let's clear that up. So we'll ask an oracle roll. If we roll low, let's say it's single mother. They don't make them any lower than that. That's as low as it gets. So it's definitely single mother situation. All right, so we got single mother that works 2 jobs. All right, so our parents, and we're born. I guess we'll go ahead and end one. Raised by single mother. All right, which means that one of our parents is absent. So there's a nice D4 table on that. We'll just roll that. 4. Disappeared to an unknown fate. We'll say. Unknown fate. Alright, so, our poor father has disappeared. And we can do a 3d6 to feel like, alright, how are things going for us? Alright, we got a basic 9, so just modest. There's no modifier for us there. This is a little bit weird because it's also not technically tied to the occupation of your parent, which seems pretty important for family lifestyle. Apparently we were doing okay with just one parent and 10 kids. So we have no modifier on our childhood home. And we rolled a 58. So we lived in a small house. Raised by a single mother. In a small house. That works for me. And we need our childhood memories. So 3d6 plus our charisma mod, which is 0, so it's just going to be 3d6 straight. So we roll alright. Alright, we got a 12. Few close friends and lived an ordinary childhood. Very basic. A few close friends and live an ordinary childhood. Alright. The next thing is that it kind of shunts us off into doing the background stuff. In the background, we don't really know how many reasons. This is the part of the aspect that I don't use very often. Where we have like, oh, you roll the acolyte. Which we would probably for this one. Or we could roll an entertainer. You know, we'll roll it just for fun. I typically don't use them because I don't find them to be... That sort of stuff's very easy to come up with. There's no real reason that I find I need to run to a D6 roll table, which is not a very robust table. But we'll roll it. So we'll do one for acolyte and one for entertainer, because I'm pretty sure entertainer's on this list too. Fitting that we got our choral music coming in the background. We start talking about the acolyte. Alright, after encountering a true servant of the gods, I was so inspired I immediately entered the service of a religious group. Does kind of sound like my character thus far, as to how I've kind of roleplayed him. Does kind of seem like that. So I got a 6 on entertainer, which be a traveling entertainer took me in and taught me the trade. That seems unlikely. So if we want to look at our background over here, like, okay, why do we choose? So we got chorister. So I think, here's the thing, we're just going to draw a little bit historically, being like, hey, there were a bunch of kids in this house. Only one of them is probably going to inherit whatever Mommy Dearest does for a job. So the rest of us are going to have to kind of make our own work in the world. The most common way that they would do that in sort of a medieval European aspect is that if you could, you might try to get into the church. Because it's one like socially mobile places you can go as an outsider if you're not already of the noble caste. We also don't know our character's caste, which would be useful for us. So let's go ahead and roll that. I roll 1d6 for this usually. 1 through 3, we're going to be lower class peasantry. If we get a 4 or 5, we're going to be sort of the middle class, so artisans, merchants, etc. We roll a 6, we'll end up being nobility. Roll it. 4. Okay, so kind of a middle class. Lived an ordinary, we'll say middle class. Class Shelton. So that tells us that probably our mother is some sort of artisan of some type, or could be a merchant, but probably an artisan of some type. And there will be other tables we can roll on to do that. I also have probably what I'll actually roll on. I know you cannot see it. Off camera sitting next to me is my actual D&D bag. I'll pull out my 1d100 table of random NPCs, basically by occupation, and we'll see what we roll. I might end up rolling something, because I find that list to be a little bit more interesting than what's in this book. But you can use what's in this book very easily. In fact, we might roll both and see which one kind of goes up fun. That's a very nice, easy trick, by the way, if you're doing stuff like this and you need to do random roll tables, is to roll twice and just either try to combine the results or just take whichever one feels better, more fun to you. Always do that. You can also just choose from the list or make something up on your own. I like the random roll tables because it gets me out of things that my mind will short wire to things that I already like. And so I might keep going back to the same well again and again and again. So I like to use the roll tables to push me to think of things a little bit beyond what I might automatically go to left to my own devices. Anyways, we have our backstory, so we need to know sort of how did we become this. So, you know, seeking, I guess, better life, right? It basically became the way that I've been playing him in the one session we've had thus far. It basically became a chorister because it's one of the easiest jobs. Of the easiest jobs. With plenty of free time. At the, let's say, Abbey or Priory. I think he's going to be at a Priory. But there's not a lot of difference between those if you don't know. Abbey and Priories are very similar to each other. Priory is just usually a smaller version of an Abbey. So usually there will be like one Abbey with an Abbot or an Abbess who might oversee, in addition to their own structure of the Abbey, multiple priories around. And each of those are independently run by prior or prioress. The sort of weird stuff you learn about sort of like medieval church organization playing D&D is interesting. I've been doing a lot of religious stuff lately for my own campaign, so a lot of that research has kind of come up in this. But now that I have it locked in my brain, it's really easy to draw upon some of that stuff. Alright, backstory. And class. Why did we become a cleric and we were already an acolyte? But let's see what they say for cleric anyways. We'll roll for a cleric, just to see. We'll roll twice, how about that? See if one of these takes our fancy. 1, a supernatural being in service to the gods called me to become a divine agent in the world. That one's actually probably pretty spot on the nose for what we gave my DM for the reason of him adventuring, which is that he's trying to track down a missing celestial. So this could very much be the reason. I'm not sure it would be the reason he became a cleric, though. But it is very storyful to be like, oh, this thing guided you, was, you know, like their music or whatever, and guided them into receiving power from the gods in this aspect. And then once that creature went missing, or one of its ilk went missing, obviously you would tap him to go search for it, and he would feel compelled to kind of follow that. Or number 6, I realized that my god works through me, and I do as commanded, even though I don't know why I was chosen to serve. That is one of the things that I have struggled with a little bit with this character, is be like, why? And a big magic of D&D magic and being like, oh, there's like wizards and stuff like that, and dragons and stuff. Like, why would, if there were missing celestials and celestials go from into some pretty high CRs, be like, and we haven't ironed out which celestial is missing. I gave that to the DM and be like, you use your discretion because I don't know when you might want to bring any of these backstory elements into existence. So if it doesn't come up until we're like level 10, it doesn't really make sense to have like a CR2 Pegasus be the thing that I'm looking for. Doesn't really jive well. So, but it does make sense that maybe he would get tapped for it and he doesn't know why. Not really sure about that. So this table, despite being only a D6 table, both of these were useful for us. But some of them wouldn't have been. Like number 4, although I was always devout. It wasn't until I completed a pilgrimage that I knew my true calling. And that would not work for our character. Our character is kind of lazy. He's a lazy cleric. Bit mischievous too. So, all right. So, I mean, we could put something down for why did we become our cleric. What was I gonna say? say, which is gonna be like, I'm just gonna say that he somehow like gained the favor of a celestial being. You know, sometimes people just like you, and that's what it is. For whatever reason, this celestial being just kind of likes them, so help to imbue them with this power. They don't really understand it maybe too well, which I think plays all right with how I've played the character so far. So I think that works. We'll see as we go on. All right, get past our class stuff. Into the good ones, the life events. All right. So, life events are pretty weird because they are not broken down. Life events are done by age, but they aren't really broken down assuming long-lived races. So, playing a half-elf, we're a bit older. Though I am saying that he looks like he's about 20, but being a half-elf, you know, it's like, who knows what age he is. So, I feel pretty comfortable. Let's go ahead and do the D6. Just in case, so, you know, there's a possibility we can get some good life events. 6 may be too many, though. Maybe we'll max out like 4 or something like that, because he is still supposed to be relatively young. Alright, well, we got 5. So, let's see how far we get. And then, go from there. So, he's got 5. So, here's 1, 2. Go. Alright, D100. We're just going to do some D100 rolls real quick. 94. 11. 4, 11. 65. 18. 5, 18. 5. 18. Perfect. Alright, what's 94? You committed a crime or were wrongly accused of doing so. No. Crime. Say accused. Interesting. 11. Got a boon. Which generally is probably just going to be like we're going to have a little extra gold, and I'll just update this character sheet. Whatever. 65. Same thing. Spend some time working a job related to your background. Bing. And that's a 2d6 just for some gold. Walking around change. Again, not really a big deal. 6. They're not all super important stuff. 18, another boon. And then this one is a tragic. You know, accused of committing a crime, that might work into how we get into kind of the church to begin with. We start that acolyte journey. Maybe that makes more sense. These aren't necessarily in chronological order. We can always mix them up as we go. But that might be a good way to be like, oh, you know, things were going pretty well, and maybe things weren't going so well. Maybe he, you know, did the old steal a bread apple kind of thing, and got picked up and sent off to the church. But unlikely. Well, we'll see. Let's deal with some of the other stuff first. Well, no, let's do, you know, I do that. Well, let's do the crime. See if we gotta do the time. 3 burglary. Alright, let's roll twice, just see what we get. 7. Extortion. Neither of these feel very tied to my character. So, since neither of these fit, can we come up with a crime that would? I think I have plugged in that he is a little bit lazy. He definitely stole stuff in our first session of the game. So he does have a little bit, but not like anything of particular value. And really only because he felt like he was getting the short end of the straw with the reward for adventuring. So and that it would just be kind of theft, I suppose. Because I don't think he would do most of these crimes. Murder, theft, burglary, assault, smuggling, kidnapping, extortion, or counterfeiting. Man. I'm trying to think of something he would get in trouble with for doing in church, but that would kind of just be like maybe laziness. But sometimes this is what happens. Nothing comes to mind. We rolled on the tables. We said, nah, nothing on the tables looked really well. Try to think of our own thing. Sometimes that doesn't work. We already said this was kind of a lot of life events. I'm okay. We can just exit out of that if we go. That nothing really kind of did anything there. So we got 2 boons. So let's roll 2d10 and see which ones we like. 7. You performed a service for a local temple. Yep. Okay. That's fine, I guess. You once performed a service for a local temple. The next time you visit the temple, you can receive healing up to your hit point maximum. Presumably for free, I guess. So I basically have a coupon for 1 free heal. That's okay. It's a bit weird. But 5 is also a relative bequeathed you a simple weapon of your choice, and that does nothing for us. We already use martial weapons. So neither of those are particularly good for us. What can we do with that? Maybe we can maybe combine those things. Maybe he gifted something. He received some sort of gift or something like that, and then he gifted that back to the temple, maybe? Maybe he was gifted his instrument. We haven't really talked about how he came into learning that, but maybe he was gifted his, let's say, Talharpa. A close friend. Alright. Let's say, we'll say received Talharpa from close friend of the Priory. Is going away present. And we'll leave that there because it could be that the close friend was leaving the Priory, or perhaps we were leaving the Priory. If we leave it ambiguous, we can noodle with it later. I like that. I like that better as a boon. We already got that stuff, so we could technically be like, well, we get some extra gold. Since we spent money to buy the... No, we didn't. We got straight up from our backstory. From background. We did not have to buy that at all. I am talking straight out my butthole. That was not true. Okay. We spent time working a job. We're going to get some other boon. So I guess let's roll 2 more and let's see if any of these take our fancy. 3 and a 6. Found a riding horse. That's a massive boon, by the way. 6, you found something interesting. You gain 1 additional trinket. Found the riding horse is interesting. An interesting way to describe that. Like there was just a riding horse out and around, because usually somebody would be riding it, which means that he would have stolen the riding horse, which is a big crime. But apparently he has this thing, so he has not been caught with it, so that wouldn't work with our criminal aspect that we deleted out very quickly. Trinkets are pretty cool. And do we have a good trinket table? Can't remember if there's one. One tiny. Can I see a trinket table? 4. Yeah, what do you guys think? We roll on that one? Roll on the 2024. I don't think I've looked at the 2024 trinket table. Sure, let's give it a roll. We'll give it a roll, and if we don't like it, maybe we'll roll again. Wooden statuette of a smug halfling. Wait, I rolled 23, didn't I? Yeah, okay. I was 22. A brass orb etched in strange runes. That could be cool. That could be something that given to help us track down the celestial, or is important to the celestial in some way. I like that. Let's roll one more just in case. 98. That's the wrong thing. 98. A glass jar containing lard with a label that reads Griffin Grease. I think I'm gonna stick with 23, actually. We have this brass orb etched with strange runes, which stop at this. Trinket. Let's do it. Alright. So a brass orb etched with strange runes. Like that. I think we're gonna put this down the celestial related? Question mark? Probably. And tragedy. So some terrible thing has befallen us or somebody in our life. It's a D12 roll. We'll roll twice and take the one we like. A 7 and a 1. 7. A lover disappeared without a trace. You have been looking for that person ever since. We've already got something we're looking for. 1 to 2. A family member or close friend died. Roll on the cause of death supplemental table to find out how. I like that. We have 9 siblings and a mother who is still around. So how about we just roll a d10 and see who unfortunately is pushing up daisies. 2. So that's going to be probably our eldest, right? Yeah. Deceased. Sorry, our eldest is deceased. There's a death, cause of death. Here we go. 1d12. 1. Cause of death unknown. Okay. Originally I was just gonna say no, but let's say maybe. Alright, cause of death unknown. Do we... This is one of those things that's like, are we even sure they're dead? I assume so, or else it would be like, they'd be missing. We must have seen the body? And so yeah, let's put that down. Have we seen the body? Alright, Oracle question tells us yes. We got 11 or better. So we have seen the body. Just don't know how they died. Very interesting. Is there like harm on the body? No? Okay. What, did they die in their sleep? I think that's... I mean, I guess we don't know anything about it. That's 50-50 then. Did they die in their sleep? Yes, okay. So a bit of a mystery there. So That's a cool thing for a DM to pull on, be like, hey, we can find out more about what happened to your eldest sibling who died and you don't know why. If there's unknown causes, that could be a poisoning situation. It could be like a dream attack thing. It's D&D, and weird fantasy stuff could have happened to them while they were asleep. But we do know that they are dead. They weren't missing, so we'd seen the body for sure. Now, is this one of those things where we accidentally buried somebody who was maybe not dead? Maybe. It will be up to our DM to decide. If we decide to do anything with that. Eldest sibling died in sleep. Cause of death unknown. I don't know what happened to him. All right. And now we entered. So those are the primary tables, essentially. Now we can enter sort of the supplemental tables, which help us with some other fleshing out some other stuff. So alignment. So we could give it alignments. I'm not a huge fan of alignments in general. I don't find them particularly useful for the game. So I'll probably forego that, I guess. I mean, I guess we can roll real fast just to see if somebody ends up being evil. Which means they have to roll an 8 or less on 3d6. Pretty unlikely. And just to see if anybody pops up as being kind of evil. So, no for Mummy. For Daddy, no. For our eldest, no. Oh, we're gonna need a little on one of them, so one of them is, in fact, evil. So our lovely sibling here is technically evil. And I'm sure as we grew up with these people, we probably have a pretty good idea of that. They thought that's not right about them. But we got another one. One, two, four. This one's evil. Well. And then we got one more older and then a couple of youngers for us. They're fine. Youngest one's evil too. The youngest one. Both of them. Ooh, both are evil. Now, evil's a very interesting connotation. So, how do we fit this in? Because it's very interesting to be like, oh, and also like there's evil people in my family. Because think about how you describe your own family. Do you describe the people in your family as evil? And to this degree that you would assign multiple people in your family as being evil and multiple people in your immediate family as being not evil, or in fact being good. So I think that's unlikely. So this is one of those things where what we're going to do is going to be like, they're pretty selfish. Sometimes I like that better, that they're incredibly selfish. So it would make sense that they don't get necessarily along with the family and maybe other people in society because they're very, very selfish, as opposed to being just outright evil. So we change that around a little bit, make it a little bit better for us. And then we do have the occupation down here. Now there is a chance that they would be an adventurer. There's actually a 5% chance that they become an adventurer. And then some other stuff here. I don't find these particularly useful. Tell you what, we're gonna roll for everybody. So mother, father, all the siblings, everybody. We're gonna roll for everybody's occupation. Because even though we're only Oriol's kind of assuming 20-ish. At least that's how he acts. Though he's probably just a little bit older. But that should mean that pretty much everybody in his family are functionally adults now. They should all have yubs. They all need yubs. So they should all have those. And their job's just not being a kid. So here's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to run down these. We'll use the ones that are in the book. If there's stuff in the book, and I realize that you guys can't see it because my fat head's in the way. There's the occupation table. We'll do the occupation table. If we get duplicates or maybe we get some stuff that I don't like, then maybe I'll go grab my other chart and we'll roll in that one instead. If we get something better. Now, we do know that that Mummy Dearest is some sort of artisan. Know that. We don't need 3d6, we need a d100. So once we get one of those, we'll just toss it in there. Which we did immediately. So artisan or guild member. Slash. Sure. We know that right off the bat. And Father Dearest. 64. Laborer. Pop that in there. So he was a laborer. Still disappeared to the unknown fate. We don't know anything about that. That's one of the things that the tables aren't great for. We'll have to figure out maybe how to flesh that out a little bit. It's a good thing to use something like if you're really stuck in, like, I don't know. You can grab like a Oracle chart, which is used for solo roleplay sometimes. And usually they'll have like a D100 chart that's like helps you figure out like just stuff that happens. It'll be like it'll give you like a verb and like a noun. And you kind of put two of those together and be like, use it as a springboard to figure out what's going on. You can also do that. 77 for Dearly Departed. Okay, so for that one we got Merchant, which is different than Artisan or Guild member. This is Merchant. So interesting that the oldest ended up being a merchant. Which means that maybe they decided not to take on the family business. And instead, our selfish second oldest is the artisan. Which speaks to potentially being some sort of drama, or maybe the oldest was just had a better head for numbers or something like that, or went off to get a little bit of education and so they can make their own thing. And that stuff's not super uncommon. You'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to give education to the oldest so they can go make their own path, become a merchant for whatever mother and the rest of the family does as like their artisan. So they have a built-in connection, trade connection that will strengthen their family. 92. Sailor. Exile, hermit, or refugee. Interesting. It was exile, hermit, refugee. And we can just figure out which one that is. Refugee would be kind of weird. Also not an occupation. Okay, exiled. Alright, so they are exiled. Reasons? We could figure that out if we wanted to. We could roll something on this table and figure that out. Is that something we want to do right now? We could roll on the crimes table. It is a D8, I think. Yep, in our crimes table. Is indeed a D8. 3, burglary. What else? More burglary. So, very much burglary. Alright, so, burglary. I'm okay with that. Be exiled for burglary is very interesting. Not to have their hand taken or something like that as a thief. Be exiled for burglary is very thing. Again, anything that gives we like anything that gives us a like, oh, that's interesting answer, because that gives us a lot of fodder to be like, I wonder what situation explains that. So I'm thinking maybe this is like somebody got into philandering around with somebody's, noble son or daughter, and a noble trumps up some charges, but then the son or daughter makes a plea. They're like, oh, can't get them handed off. I promise I'll never see them again. They're like, fine, you're exiled. You just can't be here anymore. Stay away from my kid. So something like that works pretty well. That's immediately what my mind kind of jumped to. I think that works a good one. All right, let's keep rolling. We need some more jobs. 81. Politician or bureaucrat? Let's see. I'm just gonna roll this just so I know. Okay, that's what I assumed. So I was doing like a little pyramid roll. So 1 through 4, I was gonna be super local. 5, 6, 7, it was gonna be like, oh, they're kind of like at the county. They serve like a count or something like that. 8 or 9, you're gonna be a much higher level. You're kind of like a regional area. You're like in charge, like a governor, or starting to get into like people who are like dukes. Like that, very important. And then up there would be like some sort of really like immediate royal servant. But they're going to be some sort of local. So very much a small fry. They might be like a village alderman, or on the village council. They could be like a bailiff, or a small-time reeve or something like that. Or some form of tax collector, or who knows. Could be a little local forester, lots of stuff like that. Excise, anything. All right, keep rolling. 35. Entertainer, interesting. Entertainer and laborer. And we've got 2 more. Our younger siblings. Picked up politician, or sorry, that's merchant. Actually, one went merchant, one went politician or bureaucrat. All right, so we're doubling up on a few things, which is very common on this D100 table. It's just not a lot. So we got. What was the first thing we rolled? Merchant. And our other unit was. So we've got a few here that we kind of double up on stuff. It'd be nice to have now. It makes the most sense that people would do a lot of the same work, but this is D&D. We don't have to be perfectly accurate. I'd like for each one of these, because like I said, one of the important things for us to do for the DM is be like, we're gonna give them if we're gonna give them a whole bunch of NPC named characters that they can pull on for backstory elements to weave into whatever, as a way to tie them into stuff. We do want them to all be a little bit different, so that way that gives them a lot more versatility for our dungeon master to be like, oh, I want to pick this guy because that's the exiled one. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do is that for number 1, we got to figure out what kind of artisan guild members they are, which this book will not help us with. So we do need to figure that out. Everybody here should be a half-elf. Presumably. Technically, we could end up with a tiefling. And this is assuming they're all blood relations. There could be adoptive relations in here. Again, doesn't always give us a lot of that information. Then we also have the status table if we want to figure out who's doing what. Which we'll use for our last ones here. There's also not like a gender table or anything like that, which sometimes it can be helpful to just kind of like figure out who they are. They are going to be half elves. Oh, those are feats. Looking at the wrong thing. So we'll have their relationship to. First, we gotta figure out their status, which is really something we should have rolled on first. I do have a document that outlines all this stuff like in order for myself, but and I jumped into this too quickly and didn't spend time looking for it, or else I would have already done that because I know that I need to do the status actually before we did all the other work. But here we are. Just trying to do it fast, not trying to do it as perfect as we can. Important thing is that we're getting it done. All right. So I guess let's do the status first. I'll just get it out of the way. Okay, I'm gonna pull this out so we can see them side by side. No, that was dumb because we're still gonna need the thing. All right, so their status is 14, alive, and quite successful. Now again, we still don't really know what happened to the father. Father just disappeared one day to unknown fate. This is one of the kind of the downsides of it. It doesn't give us a lot of like, why? What were the mysterious circumstances of them missing? There's a table technically we can roll on that would help us with that. But let's do one thing at a time. Father's gone. We don't need to roll for him. One of them is confirmed dead. So we for sure don't need to do that. That was our tragedy. You know, we had the eldest die, and the next oldest ended up being the artisan or guild member. We were assuming that the eldest sibling died once they were already an adult, but they might have died when we were a kid. Which makes it both more tragic and a little bit more suspicious with that second eldest then becoming the artisan and guild member. Maybe it's like, maybe there was something there that we don't know about. Be interesting. Again, like a lot of this won't see the light of day as far as the campaign's concerned, but it's interesting that for my character to be like, oh, if that living oldest artisan gets pulled into it, or has something to do with their mother, like, ever since the eldest sibling died, I've always been just kind of not gotten along with that person. Again, they're like selfish / evil. We're like, I mean, it's hard to point fingers at your own siblings and your own family, but be like, I don't know, man. There's always just like the question mark in the back of your mind is be like, hey, did they do something to my older brother / sister? Maybe. Like, I really don't know for sure. Like, because of their personality, I just don't know. Like, I can't rule out that there was no foul play. Especially when they died to unknown causes in their sleep. They smother him with a pillow? Like, seems unlikely that, a house with like a dozen people in it wouldn't have woken up to that. But it could also be something weird like, oh, maybe the night our half-elf father went missing, that oldest sibling died of unknown causes in their bed. And so it's like a double tragedy. And they're like, it's clearly must be related in some way, but we have no idea how. It gives us a lot of questions. Things that we can pull up on if we want to. But let's continue with our status. The one's dead and we know they're dead. Alive and well. Of course they are. Alive and infamous. Alright, so our oldest is alive And, well, that would put this one, our sailor, as being alive and infamous, but not necessarily a bad person. But they are a sailor. We could say they're a pirate. They're part of an infamous, like, pirate. Infamous. And pirate. I like it. I was thinking it was like we could leave them down here for this exiled and burglary one. Like, that one really fits the deal, right? But there's no reason this one can't be part of like a pirate crew or something like that. I like that. Whether they are or are not. Keep rolling. Rolled a 9, alive and well. A 10, also alive and well. 7, alive but doing poorly. Okay, so let's do our alive and wells. Alive and well. Let's see, that's alive, but 3, 2, 2, and we're just gonna roll d6 because it gives us 3 options here. So we'll just go with the first one here. They're doing bad due to relationship difficulties. That makes sense if we if we're leaning in on the thing, like maybe they haven't given up on love with that nobleman's son or daughter or whatever. Oh wait, that's the wrong one. Wrong characters. Due to relationship. And I mean, as an entertainer, yeah. Unfortunately, people in the entertainment business, as a career, unfortunately not super well known for very much stereotype, but not super well known for being able to hold down a relationship real well. Being good people to be in relationships with. So that makes that tracks. 13. Alive and quite successful. Alive and well. And quite very interesting that our just standard labor sibling is the one that's quite successful. Not everybody else, except our mother, who was obviously quite successful because they were able to afford a middle class home with what, 10 kids, and that disappeared with a single mother situation. Interesting. So obviously must be quite good at what she does. And we've got our youngers here. Well, that's right. That's supposed to be alive and well. And our last one, and who is also alive and well. That's going to be most of them, most of the time. Totally fine. What we're doing is we're just giving ourselves the raw ammo. But as you see, as we go through the tables, we start to figure out who these people are in their lives and kind of maybe what happened with their life. And relationships. I don't know why this is a 3d4 table. That's kind of awkward. Friendly. Most of these will be friendly. 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 Basically going until we don't get friendly. Alright, so we got 6 until we get to indifferent. Okay, so go friendly, because we need to do father as well. Things were there. And then this one's indifferent. So our local politician or bureaucrat, that person's kind of indifferent to us. Friendly. Hostile. Interesting. So we have our our closest older sibling, who is a basic laborer. They're alive. They're quite successful, but they are hostile in their relationship to us. Very interesting. Obviously, that must be something. Is this one the person, like, this is really the only other person who's doing really well in the family, except for Mother Dearest? Because this person's like, nope, they went no contact. They cut ties with their family. It's like, I figured out. I just moved out because I couldn't deal with everything else that was going on with the family, and I'm just off on my own. And like, please don't come find me. Don't work with me. If you show up, I'm gonna be pissed. Or felt like they got pushed out, or who knows, might be upset about the disappearance of the father. Our dead oldest sibling might be upset about our sibling who seems to have become a pirate. The one who got exiled. Like, you look at some of the stuff that's happened here and you're like, oh, even the people who aren't like super selfish / potentially evil, we're not great as a family of people. Like, we're not super great, most of us. Like, we've clearly done some stuff. Not the nicest people in the world. All right, so that leaves us with a relationship with two younger siblings. All right, friendly. We got that. And we friendly as well. It's fun to have the selfish ones who are friendly towards you. It's a much more complex relationship than being like, oh, well, they're not friendly with you and they're super selfish / evil. Instead of having them be friendly, it makes a much more dynamic kind of relationship. And then the one that you think you should get along with, the one who's like just does good, honest work, that they are making their own way in the world, they're being really successful, and that's the one that's like, if you show up, they're gonna throw fists. Oof, that's rough. Okay, so do we want to re-roll some of these occupations? We're gonna need to roll anyways because we don't know what kind of guilder they are. Now we could go look at the player's handbook and just pick up, it gives us a handful of different things we can roll on for that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my binder. My sweet Dungeon Master folder right here. Where I have I have two D100 tables that sit back to back. Just little custom ones I made a long time ago. It feels like a long time because I use them so often. They're actually not that. One of them, and they're on the same page. They're front and back. I guess I can show it to you. You're not gonna be able to see it. There's a D100 table of NPCs. Then on the other side, there is a D100 table of shops and market stalls. So usually when it comes up to something like this and I need to know kind of what an NPC is doing or what the job is or something like that, I'll roll a D100. I'll look at one of the charts. If I don't like what's on the chart, I'll flip to the other chart and use that result. It is of note that the D100 NPCs chart is actually way more than 100. There's usually about 3 entries per, so it's really about somewhere between 200 and 300. That gives you some options. Oh no, clicking on stuff. Alright. I know you guys won't be able to see this. I'm not going to spend the time to pull it up. I do have it here digitally, but still need to pull it up. Alright, so who do we want to roll for? Alright, we need to know Mother Dearest. What kind of artsies do they artisan? So we got a 64. Alright, well, nothing's going to work on this side because that's freedom fighter, populist, demagogue, revolutionary. Would make Mother very interesting, but not generally a thing you get paid for as an artisan or a guild craftsperson. So let's look on the other side. Or was it 63 I was looking at? No, I was looking at the right thing. Alright, 64. Works in a mint or bank. It could be like a minter. Which I guess would make them like a whitesmith or a goldsmith. Yeah, we'll put it under that. So That would make sense that why she was able to support this family all by herself. If she's like a goldsmith. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so she is a goldsmith. And then we'll just roll a yes or no. Like, is she officially part of a guild? The world that we're playing in has an adventurers guild, so that makes me think that the world's relatively guild heavy. So I'm going to say +5 to this roll. So again, if we get 11 or better, the answer is yes, but we get to add +5 to that. So really only if we roll a 1 through 5 is the answer going to be no. Doesn't matter either way. All right, so she's a guilder for sure. Now, that almost for sure means that our selfish older sibling, who is carrying on presumably the family business, is also a goldsmith. So we'll do the same thing. We'll roll a d20. We're going to have a +5 because it's almost sure that they are. Good thing we have that +5, or else that would have been a no. Okay. They are also a goldsmith. Which makes sense. So I think we're going to assume that our older deceased, I'm going to say that they died as a child. I don't think that because it would make no sense for the oldest to not carry on the family business. There are some reasonable reasons why that might happen, but assumably this person went on to become a merchant, which, if they have that good of a head for business, why wouldn't they also just be part of the goldsmithy? All right, that all works for me. Laborer, we don't really need to know anything about specifically, because laborer is unskilled labor, so they kind of do whatever. Just kind of unfortunately, like a peasant. Now, a goldsmith guild member probably lives in a city, rather than out in the country. So interesting. That kind of changes my thoughts of that character. My current character, Zoriel, I was assuming he's from sort of a plains region, like a grasslands kind of area. So maybe he grew up in like a boom town. That might make more sense. Like a gold rush kind of town. Maybe spend a lot of time there, which might make more sense. I like that. All right, so we don't need to know anything about our father. That one's dead. One's the Smith member. We're just gonna assume that this person's probably a pirate. I think I'm good with that, since they are infamous. Now, they could be infamous for reasons other than being a pirate, but a pirate seems like the most common reason for them to be a sailor that's alive and infamous. Makes me think that, oh, you must be on like a well-known pirate crew. You're probably not like the captain pirate. You're not Blackbeard, but you are, probably like a bosun or something. If you are, known. So this one, we don't know what this one does, actually. They're exiled for burglary. We don't actually know what they do. So let's roll on our handy dandy 100 table. And I'm going to use mine, because I can. That leaves our options at 61, either being a mason or engraver. Okay. And 61 over here is, ooh, a bodyguard. Oh, that works so well if we want to go with the angle for a love that cannot be between a bodyguard and the son or daughter of the house. I like it. I'm gonna go with that. And then it makes it very easy, like why they would have been a burglary in the house. And obviously they'd have weapons and stuff with them. They'd have access to the home. About that. All right. I like it. Makes sense to me. All right, we have a local politician and bureaucrat, and we've got a couple of these, so we should probably figure out what they are. Again, I think I'm going to roll on this table again and see if it gives me an idea of like what that official bureaucratic thing might be. $37. That gives us guild artisan, craftsman, or guild master. Okay, we don't need that. Oh no, I hit the spacebar. What was I on? 37. Or forage. Interesting. We talked about doing like a forester or something like that. That kind of makes sense. Maybe we'll go with that. Maybe so that first one's gonna be a forester. I like it. So forester is basically and what you might call like it's a measure somewhere between like game warden and park ranger. And they're gonna be the local forester. And we'll just put that. Technically a bureaucrat and work for the government. Our entertainer is an entertainer. Do we care what type of entertaining they do? Probably not at this point. Really won't be important. They could be an actor, they could be a singer, they could be a troubadour, be any sort of thing. Might be a juggler or a tumbler. I think I'm okay with any of those. Labor is simple enough that there's no need to really confuse that. I like merchant. I kind of want to know what the merchant's selling, though. So, roll for this. We'll use our market install D100. I got a 48. Which, on my D100 shops and market stalls table, a 48 is a horticulturalist. So they sell ornamental plants. Just for fun. So this is sometimes I do, like I said, sometimes you roll twice, you take the better one that you like. Sometimes I also do this. You saw where I take the same roll and then look at two different charts, which I can do here. But I don't think that's going to be useful for us. A bather, dyer, a tanner. I mean, as a merchant, that actually does make sense. So we got one of the ones where the merchant does make sense. But the other thing we can do, rather than re-rolling, is sometimes we can just invert the roll. So we went 48, let's see what 84 is. Certainly doesn't make sense for that first one. On this other table, 84, semi-precious gemstones or crystals. How well's our person doing? Alive and well. Okay. So yeah, let's say that they are, you can say that. Pull this table so I can stuff down. So sitting on my keyboard and accidentally re-rolling when I'm not trying to. So yeah, we'll say gems merchant. I like it. Or I could have gone with a... man, that makes a lot more sense for like the area though. Yeah, we'll go ahead and I'm gonna swatch it and do it like this is like a pelt slash textiles. Pelt and textiles merchant. They're kind of like a mercer. They take around a bunch of cloth and things like that, and they sell that between different areas. And our last one, our very youngest one, they are also a politician and or bureaucrat. Let's find out what kind. What maybe they're in charge of, maybe what they look after. 76. Oh, we got a prisoner. Gibbet or pillory, which could mean bailiff. Bailiff's a very easy one to go with. That's generally what a bailiff's in charge of. One is young acolytes, apprentice, link boys, stable hands, students, or urchin. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one. I think they are. This would make sense for being the younger, selfish one. I'm gonna say that they are, in fact, executioner. We could also say that they were the judge, but I like executioner better because it kind of leans into that selfish, maybe evil kind of aspect that we've picked up for this younger sibling. So we know a little bit about each of these now. And also, like an executioner, generally, this is weird, like a weird medieval history thing. So, and typically in Western European, like medieval history, the legal system, as far as what you do with criminals, is exceptionally different from how we do them today. Today, we incarcerate people, generally. Generally, you would not incarcerate people, because I don't know if you know this, but, like, that's expensive to, like, make sure people are housed and fed and their health's taken care of and all that stuff. Like, that stuff's a burden upon the state, so the state's like, well, obviously we don't want that. Why are we rewarding people who break our laws by giving them food and shelter and having them not work? You're like, well, that's a interesting point you make. Hmm. So if you were one of the few that got incarcerated, which is generally like a political reason why they would do that, basically keep you from being outside, so they can keep tabs on you. Generally, that was done. You had to pay the expense for basically being there, and the more you paid, the nicer your accommodations and sort of things that you were able to have in your cell. That's why sometimes you'll see like old movies and they'll go see like a political prisoner or something like that, and they basically have what is essentially a hotel room rather than rather than what looks like a prison cell. Like there's a nice bed and they've got nice food and wine and lots of books and like a writing desk and all sorts of stuff there. Like people come and visit them, and that's because they're paying for that privilege. In addition to that, one of the things that happens is that the executioner basically has the ability. One of the things that an executioner usually gets is the ability to pull from that person's the executed's personal effects. So, oftentimes, one of the things that would happen is that those people who are about to be executed would basically leave a will and leave something to the executioner. And they would do this so the executioner would, in effect, make it a very quick and clean execution. As this is one of the things where the fiction of executions and the reality of executions, especially beheadings, don't match up very well. First of all, axes rarely used in executions because they don't cut through necks very well. Typically would use a sword. This is one of the things that like Game of Thrones gets right. You go look at the original early executions of Game of Thrones. They'll use a big ass sword instead. That's why. Swords are much sharper, much easier to cleave. The other thing is that it's a lot of times not a one and done kind of chop. I remember there's like a report. I remember. Oh, I had a Belgian history teacher, and she told me, I think it was, I can't even remember who was getting executed. Anyways, it took like 37 strikes on the neck to sever the head from the body. So it's not clean, and it's generally not fast. So you want to pay the executioner to make it generally clean and fast. If you don't, they're not really. There's really no reason for them to, sharpen the sword, make sure everything gets done right. So that it could be extremely agonizing and, somewhat long death, very violent end. Or you could pay them to do it quick. So this is one of those weird things that why do I know this stuff? Well, I know it from a history teacher, but I also just know it from D&D stuff, and you pull that stuff in and be like, okay, so this person is probably an executioner. And I think that's more interesting than making them like a bailiff or like a reeve or something like that, because those are easy ones. But let's make them the executioner instead. The profiting, off of those who die. Dun, dun. All right. So we've got most of our stuff here. Is there anything else we need to roll for? Now, we can always go in and add names to them and give them gender and physical appearance and things like that. But like I said, the problem with doing this for the backstory reason, one of the only downsides is that we end up with so many characters. So basically, thus far, we have 11 different NPCs in our backstory. Actually, more than that, because if we think about the celestial creature and other stuff like that, we have even more. We have the close friend from the Priory. So we're ending up, we're north of a dozen. So when we take that into consideration, it's actually not super useful for us to spend a whole bunch of time fleshing these out, because we don't know which one of these, if even any of these, will be important to whatever the D&D campaign is going to be, about this campaign that I'm playing in, will be. So I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time that is going to end up with nothing, unless I'm just free, unless I just have free time and I'm feeling motivated and I'm getting into it. You know, if that's you, go for it. Just realize that the work that you're doing here, after this point, there's a big chunk of it that may not actually end up being very important. So here we go. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this last one, and I think other than this, I think most of these life events make sense for being in order. Yeah, those will work. Because we had the eldest sibling dying in their sleep. Now here's where we're going to go. Is this, we have no indication, because our father disappeared to an unknown fate, and our eldest sibling died in their sleep for unknown reasons. One of the things that we can do up here, there's some weird stuff that we have. So weird stuff is a table. That's one of the things you can get. Or supernatural event. Or arcane matters. Now the thing is that none of these things happen to us. I think it's unlikely that we saw either the father or the eldest sibling kick the bucket or disappear, whatever the case may be. But we'll use this just in case. Use an oracle roll. So 1d20, I think it's extremely unlikely, so I'm going to say -5 to this. So we really got to roll a 16 or better for it to be yes. Alright, so do we have any idea what happened to our father at all? Were we there for like the event? No, absolutely not. We are as far away from that as can be. I'm thinking this is a thing where it's like, father maybe went out of town to do some work, maybe went to like a market day or something like that, and we're like, oh, we're definitely not going to see him till like tomorrow anyways. Tomorrow came and went, and he didn't come back, and then a few more days went back, and then we were like, what happened? So yeah. I like that, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw this in here. I'm not even going to say that it has to be a market day. And disappear. We're just going to say disappeared while traveling. Why were they traveling? I said market day, but it could be they were traveling for work. Maybe they were traveling to see some other family. They could have been traveling to the Lord's Manor for whatever reason. Could be a lot of reasons. We don't know why they're traveling. Not particularly important to us. All we know is that they are just in the wind. Our dearest father just disappeared. We're pretty sure Father Dearest is alive, but we don't actually factually know that. I don't think we've gotten a postcard or a birthday card or something like that from our father with a $5 bill, and it'd be like, yep, just letting you know, still alive. I don't think that's happened. So, Daddy Dearest is just in the wind somewhere. Almost like Stranger Things-ish. Just be like, it's gone, man. I don't know. They just got spirited away or something. I mean, they could be on a different plane. They're more likely they're here somewhere. But they could be gone for whatever reason. So, what about our brother? We said that they can sleep to unknown clauses. Were we around when that happened? Or at least, I mean, we were probably there, because we all, like, 10 people trying to, or 11 people trying to live in one house, which is a small house. So, we were all there, but we might have all been asleep. Did we witness anything? Let's say that. About our eldest sibling's death. Again, I think it's extremely unlikely, so we're going to give a -5 to this. Alright. 16 -5 is 11. 11 plus is a yes. We found something out. Now, here's the thing, is that I'm going to roll on the weird stuff and also the supernatural events. It's hard because one's a D100 table and one's a D12 table. Because the tables are all over the place as to what die. They really, in Xanthar's guide, in the This Is Your Life section, wanted you to make sure you use every single type of dice that you have. They got everything. They got D4s, they got D6s, they got D8s, they got 10s, 12s, 100s, 20s, babies. We got everything here. That's kind of how they did it. Like, I feel like they could have worked a little bit harder and not have to use every single die type, but that's neither here or there. Alright, so we'll roll a 12 and then a D100, and then we'll pick out which one maybe feels better. Alright, 11. You were swallowed by a giant fish and spent a month in his gullet. Nope, that won't work for sure. Alright, and we rolled 02 for supernatural event. Ensorcelled by a fae and enslaved for 1d6 years before you escaped. Now this is very cool. So this is one of those like bleary-eyed, like being a kid waking up in the night. What? And just in the sort of like the wane light of probably the hearth, see this strange creature standing over your elder sibling's bed, and your elder siblings just like absolutely enraptured by it, leading them out of the home in the middle of the night. That seems pretty dope. I like it. Yeah, that sounds good to me. So we are saying that we, right, but they killed them. Killed them in their sleep. Which does juxtapose us knowing things about potentially the second oldest maybe being the cause of that. A creature. I don't know. I think that could still work. Because we don't know what maybe summoned the Fey creature. Maybe the Fey creature is a little bit more like a sleep paralysis demon kind of situation. So we witnessed, at least we think. Strange Fey creature standing over bed. Go. Found out they just to make it maybe a little extra creepy. I think this is very like Leary. I don't think like our character was fully awake. This is maybe like an effect of the Fae or something where it's like suppresses a lot of being awake, very much like a sleep spell. And maybe taking a look at it and be like, hey, did we see this sibling, our second oldest sibling? Were they? And my thought is maybe you also see that. I think the memory is really blurry, but do you think maybe you saw them awake, maybe staring directly at our character as this all happens, like impassively, maybe? like fully wide awake staring at us. Again, I think it's extremely unlikely that we saw this, so -5. Gotta roll a 16 or better. If it does, then that very, very weird thing happens. So no, we didn't see that. Perfect. First, we know we were the only one who saw it before we drifted back off to sleep. Perfect. All right. And this is most of it, by the way. We've pretty much finished most of everything I kind of wanted to look at here. Now, there's a bit more to do. We still have a bit more to do. That's everything that's basically going to come out of this book. Author's Guide to Everything. Takes a little time. We drop this down. I mean, we've been doing it for, you know, not quite 2 hours. And of course, it goes much slower because I'm talking about it. It doesn't go nearly as fast. And again, if you ever want to cut out the mass amount of siblings that you want to do, it will be even shorter. But you can knock these out pretty quickly. You don't have to do that. Or you can pick and choose if you're like, I don't really care about their siblings or anything like that. You can skip that section if you don't want to. You don't want their parents to be part of it, and you don't have to be like mother and father are fine. It's whatever. So you can kind of skip that however you want. But the next thing I want to do is I have some questions I like to put in here, and I'll have to go grab those. And this is just like, I think there's 7 of them that will help us kind of figure out the last bits of this backstory. So our character backstory question. And bam. Okay. I'm gonna put you guys on chat real quick, so that way I can pull these up. Yep. See if I can find them. I think I wrote them. I didn't. Not do that because that would be useful, of course. Yeah, here we go. Character building questions. Take these. And I can close this out. And we're done with Xanathar, so now. Okay. I guess technically I still need to... I just closed him. Technically I still need to update his gold amount. Again, could have taken the horse. Taking the horse would have been real nice. The horse is worth, what, like 50 gold? 50 or 75 gold right off the top. Really nice. But nobody else in my party is going to have a horse. And frankly, I did that in the last campaign I was in that I did this long drawn out character progression for. And everybody else eventually did get horses, which was nice. But you really have to play a very specific type of D&D game for horses to come up very much. I feel like they don't ever come up in most D&D games unless you're playing like a cavalier or a paladin, and even then horse travel just doesn't come up much, even though I feel like it should. It allows you to get a lot of places, not necessarily faster, unless it's close or you're using stage posts. I'm getting in the weeds. And it allows you to carry a lot more, primarily is what it does. And can be a good way to get the player characters to offload some gold. Let's go ahead and go to... Actually, before I get started, really what I should do is take a quick break. But I'm going to go ahead and put it here. I'm going to go get some more coffee. But I think we'll just go ahead and do this. 2-page break. Puts us at our next one. And that allows us to do format, text, bulletin number 2, sure, let's do numbered. Yes, that looks great. Really, sub questions. Yeah, I mean 7 questions, but there is like a sub question. So I'm gonna go just refill up my coffee real quick, so you guys hang on for a second. I'm gonna do that. We'll come back and then we'll crush out the last of these backstory questions. Then I'll tell you about sort of my next step, which is not something I'm gonna do on stream, which is And, well, we'll talk about it there. It's basically we're going to take all the information we've gotten here. We've gotten our glut of information, and then we're going to turn it into an actual backstory. Because as you've noticed thus far, there is no story. We just have the back. We've got a lot of back info. We don't have a backstory. And we'll talk about how to take these things and turn them into a story. But for that, I'm going to take a quick break, fill up my coffee, move on from there, and then that'll be all for today. But hang on, we got a little bit more to do, and we'll be good to go. All right, see you in just a second. Alright, let's get back to it. Go ahead and drop in. Sounds quite loud for some reason. Also just loud in my ear. There we go. Okay, we're into these character backstory questions. These are ones I found very useful, and they are originally pulled and then modified somewhat from how to be a great GM. You know, this guy. Guy's fine. He's not dead, but he is moving away from that channel. There was a whole thing about it. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out, where it talks about the current state of YouTube and how your channel can actually get worse over the time, kind of like peak and then start to fall off. Very interesting. But do that after we finish here, obviously. All right, so who is our family or close friends? Well, we've got some good answers on that. So we got about 7 plus some extra questions. So who we got? So who do we think out of this is maybe our closest sibling? Well, it's certainly not the one that's hostile to us, or probably not the one that's indifferent to us. So we've got a number of ones who are friendly towards us. So we're kind of spoiled for choice. Who do we want to be? I think it's somebody who's probably not selfish / evil. So I think we're gonna knock those out of the list. So that means either our dead one. So I would say mother, obviously, mummy dearest. So I think we'll throw mother in there. I think we're probably quite close with our mother. As close as somebody as a child with 9 siblings can be with their mother. You know, time poor. Not a lot of FaceTime with mommy. And she's also holding down a job. Okay. Which one of ours? I'm really hard up not to say the sailor / pirate. That does be like the one that's like friendly, but also like this person is clearly on the illegal side of stuff. But technically not selfish / evil. So interesting. Which kind of maybe falls in akin with our cleric Oriole as a character, where he's like, yeah, he is a cleric, yeah, he did live at a priory, but he's also kind of like a scamp, and he's also kind of lazy. He's not really the best. He's not a exemplar of what it means to be a God-fearing cleric in this world. He's just like, eh. And I think he's also kind of young, and he still really doesn't know what he's doing yet. So I do like that one. Is there anybody else who makes more sense? The Exile Bodyguard is really nice. That's a really fun one. I'm trying to think. It's very fun. I like that both of these older siblings who are just like not around end up being his favorite ones. I don't know. I kind of like that actually. And like him, he is also friendly with these people, and he's also not around anymore. So yeah, I think maybe he got along with these 2 older siblings, which would make sense. It's like you had the eldest who was deceased, the second eldest who ends up coming in to take over the family business. Then you have these 2 older ones who are just like, well, I guess we always knew that we were going to be on our own. And we didn't know what that was going to be. We knew we were going to have to find our own place in life. And some of the younger ones kind of already knew what they were going to be. Like obviously, the one closest older to him was like, whatever, it'll just be sorry, not the weird class thing that I just did. Classes thing that I did, where it's like, whatever, I'll be a laborer. I won't try hard or anything. That's not how that works. He's like, well, and to his credit, also worked very well for him and or her or them, where they are alive and very successful, and they don't want anything to do with us. um, but yeah, I think we have a lot of older siblings that are just kind of screw ups, right? You have the pirate, you have the exiled bodyguard, you have the entertainer that's got a problem with their relationship. Whereas, you know, the other people seem to be doing pretty well in their family. So we're definitely on the screw up side of the family, I feel like. So, yeah, let's go with, yeah, I'm gonna say these, maybe we'll open it up and be like, these three are gonna be the most important in his life. I think so. So we've got his, I like that. So, who are your family or close friends? This is the ones that really we're just showing the dungeon master at this is like, these are the ones, and when I'm thinking about the backstory, these are the ones I think have a lot of impact in a positive way. The ones we're closest to. So, Mother Dearest, you've got a pirate sibling, got exiled sibling, and even though they are, you know, selfish / potentially evil, we are gonna do with the entertainer. Not particularly friends with the youngest one, so we might see that like these older ones were sort of exiting the household, and so it was maybe down to only like, you know, for a while it was just only maybe these, and then at the end it was maybe just like these. And so he's like, well, we're on good terms. He's on good terms with like his younger siblings, but he's like, yeah, they are a lot. Again, they are the selfish / evil ones. So it's like, they wheel and deal. They make unscrupulous deals. Maybe this one's an executioner and puts people to death for a living, and you're like, that's not. I mean, it's a job, but it's a job. But yeah, I think maybe not. Even though they are friendly, maybe he doesn't have a very close relationship with his younger siblings. So yeah, we're gonna go with those, and then we have the entertainer. I like that. Oh, we need close friends as well. So we have only kind of the 2 close friends. So we have his priory friend. Give him the harpa. It's a stringed bowed instrument. Very interesting instrument. Very almost like a Nordic kind of vibe. I'm kind of vibe. That is the vibe. It's Nordic. It's a Nordic instrument, among other places, but certainly Nordic. And our other one's going to be whoever gave us this trinket. Like I said, I think he's gotten touched by brass orb. And I was thinking to put this from our friend. So I mentioned this in some previous streams, in the stream where I built this character. So if you want to see that, you can go check it out on the channel, where I actually built the nuts and bolts of building the character from the ground up, and why that takes me so long and how I do it. And it's very different than probably potentially other processes you've seen. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. But in that, I'm piggybacking it off of, so we originally played a 2-shot to sort of introduce the world. I didn't play with this character, played with a totally separate character, didn't know anything about the world. That one was a celestial warlock who was beholden to like a Kirin as their sort of celestial patron. So I wanted the new characters that I built to have a tie to that character in some way, even if it's super tenuous. Like, I don't think that this character probably knows that character. Might have maybe met them once briefly, but probably was not important enough to be like noticed. to have made a lot of impact, but apparently didn't make an impact with this Kieran, or maybe it was him playing the Tal Harpa, or whatever it is. And so we're going to put this, then we're going to see this. We don't know. And like I said, I'm leaving it very open to my DM, so they can have. I like to leave an idea of what I want to go with. That way, when I throw it to the DM, they can look at it and be like, can we change some of this? And I'll be like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. So, and nothing's locked in stone until the DM gives it the big double thumbs up, and they go, yes, I like this. I want this. I will use this, or I won't use this, and it doesn't matter. And if that's the case, I can make up whatever the heck I want. The brass orb, it could be celestial. Bust. So we still have that kind of going up. So that's because I'm like, the brass orb could be from that celestial, could be from somebody that's helping him to find the celestial. A lot of different things. Yeah, do we have any rivals or enemies? I don't think we have a lot of enemies necessarily. I'm not sure we have a lot of rivals. I think there are people at the Priory who don't like him. Like I said, he's kind of a he's a bit of a schlub, right? He's kind of lazy. He doesn't really have any high aspirations of working his way up to becoming like a bishop or something like that in the church. Like, he's clearly not interested in that. He's like, I just kind of want to live my life and chill out and have a good time. He is that kind of character. I do think that he has I think he has people who don't like / at the Priory. So I think that's probably pretty common. Other people who are kind of my enemy. I mean, we do have an older sibling who does not like us, and we don't know what exactly that's about. Older labor. We have our next oldest sibling, and I put up the book too soon because I do believe there is a thing in the book where there is a very section, because this can happen with some of the backgrounds you roll up for your life events where you're like, you made an enemy of such and such, and there's a thing where it's like, and it's your fault, or it's their fault, or it's nobody's fault, or things like that, which I've used before. I used that in our solo playthrough. You see that where we actually ended up coming across that backstory character, one that blamed our character, and our character blamed themselves for things that had happened with a previous adventurer party where people had died, and she and that character met up and kind of came to terms with it over a number of sessions, as I kind of played through that. Next oldest sibling, so we don't know too much about our next oldest sibling. We could roll for it. I mean, I guess I got the thing here. Question is do I still have Oracle sheet in here? It's a good question. Not have it in here. I haven't needed it in a minute. But I've been running. I do. So these are actually this prompt sheet is actually from Shadow Dark. Regardless of whether you play Shadow Dark or not, you can actually get this sheet from free for them. It's a free download for like the solo package of playing Shadow Dark. If you wanted to ever try out Shadow Dark, playing it as a solo ttrpg, pull it out. But it just gives us like I said, it gives us basically a verb and a noun, essentially. So we'll roll 2-1. Go. 12 and 12 and 10. Okay, that makes it easy. We disagreed. Yeah, that makes sense. Over risk. Disagree risk. Agree over risk of what, I wonder? What could they have been disagreeing over risk over? Because this person's just labor, alive, successful. And let's see if we can get a. Can we get another noun? Maybe that'll give us some more insight. Free for the risk of 93 goal. Okay, well that is, yeah, obviously, but that doesn't really help me a lot. Thanks. Absolutely worthless. So they had some sort of disagreement about risk. Ooh, is it like a money thing? Maybe it's a money thing. Like asking for a loan from your like younger brother, maybe. Maybe Oriel said that he would do it, and then maybe he didn't have the money, or is it that? Is this like just a regular old family money squabble? No, okay, it's not that. I didn't give any pluses. Didn't assign any pluses. The other things that people typically get in lights over. Oh, you know what? Is our older brother mad because like we won't let the thing go about our eldest brother and that what we thought we saw? Yeah, okay. That makes sense. That he's just so tired of hearing about this aspect, about witnessing some sort of strange creature that we think killed the oldest sibling. And this one, our closest sibling, is like, well, tired of hearing this. Like, we don't know what happened. Just dying to sleep, man. Like, get over it, please. It's been some years. Right? I'm tired of listening to you about this. If you keep bringing this up, or you keep thinking, especially as like maybe being like a lower class laborer, being like, you bring that talking to people around me, like people think that my family is cursed by some sort of fake creature, like I'm gonna lose my job and I'm doing things are going really well for me. Like, you stay away from me. Just stay away from me. Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. But yeah, next one's a sibling. They're gonna be like, they threatened by a fey creature slash family question mark? Right, because we don't know anything about it is the thing. And I'm not sure that he's gotten a lot of opportunities given what he does. It's something like a priority that to really like research any of that. And also he probably doesn't want to speak to a lot of people about it. He doesn't want to speak that into existence considering how his sibling has reacted to it. Who may have been like the only person he's ever confided in them about. He might have been like when this happened, he might have been the youngest child. The two younger children may not have been born yet. One of them's a changeling. No, I don't think that's it. But yeah, I think they're just kind of tired of it. Okay, what were you doing before you became an adventurer? I was I know this one. I was a chorister at XXX Priory. We don't know. Don't have a name for the Priory yet. We could make up one, but honestly, not that important. And again, when I was building character, I was like, he's either going to be from an abbey or priory, I'm pretty sure. I decided to go priory just because I think it makes more sense for him to have been where he was at priory. So the chorister, and I think we said it before, but just in case you missed it, basically I took the acolyte and entertainer backgrounds, kind of mushed them together. And when you do that, you end up with what I got was the chorister, which is basically the person at the priory in this case, who's in charge of like the choral music. He's in charge of the music at the temple. Temple slash priory, abbey, whatever. In the church, he's the person who leads the music, so he's the one who's like leading the others in their singing and their chants and stuff like that. That's his job. He took that job because it looked really easy compared to what a lot of other people were doing. And gave him like a lot of downtime. Why'd you leave? We know the answer to this. He's searching for a missing celestial creature. And this is one of my favorite questions that I really like so much. As I find out with any character that's out doing adventuring, they are either running towards something, so they have some sort of goal that they're pursuing, or they're running away from something in their past. I don't think our character is necessarily running away from anything, but they also don't seem to be chasing anything particular. Like, they have a mission, but is that mission like their ardor? Is that like their passion? I don't think so. So what are we running away from? It seems like just kind of a droll life. I think he's with the siblings who are like, maybe this just isn't for me. The one that went off and became a pirate. The one that was a bodyguard and ended up getting exiled. The one who is, what was the other one? We have the other pirate, the bodyguard. Oh, the one who became like an entertainer, who I assume is a traveling entertainer. So we're leaving sort of like we'll say leaving a life of humdrum toil behind. Because again, he is sort of he's kind of lazy. He's not above some mischief. So he is just kind of he struck me as, while I was playing him in the first session, as like a kid that still has some like growing up to do. Still pretty young. Again, we said that he's like, maybe he looks like he's 20, but you know, as a half elf he might be like 30, but does seem like, you know, he's still got a bunch of growing up to do. He's just kind of been a very arrested development kind of situation where he's just kind of like, he just kind of hit this stage and he just kind of became a lacquer. He reminds me almost of like Scott Pilgrim, like the titular character from the books and movie, or graphic novels and movie. But he's just kind of in a funk, just doesn't really have a lot going on. And so he's just kind of been taking the path of least resistance for the maximal output. And we're just kind of, yeah. And what did you leave behind because of it? Yeah, so he's been sent off on this actual mission. So he kind of like left his essentially his cushy job behind. Now, would the things, if he had never been called to adventure, would everything have gone well for Oriel, and would he have, walked off into the sunset and lived a well and normal life? Probably not. I mean, he's, like I said, it feels like he has some growing up to do, and that's probably what his adventure is going to be about, at least for him personally. But I think he got a lot of that in this first session, where I think he was a little bit shell shocked by what other people were doing in the session, other PCs were doing in the session, how they dealt with problems, their conflict resolution methods, and he was like, "Oh, ooh, okay, we just kill things. Interesting. Yikes. People are wild." But at the same time, not real people, right? Killed with like kind of twig blights, so he's like, he feels still a little ambivalent about it. It's not like we just like killed a bunch of humans or something like that. But he did leave this sort of like cushy job behind. What's a vice, fear, or secret that will get you in trouble? Like, bro, you're lazy. He's lazy, is what he is. He's a bit lazy, and I think he's maybe a bit wry. Uh, so it's not necessarily a vice, but or necessarily a fear. It's just like a character trait, really, of his, and sometimes that's enough. Like, I don't think that he has. I mean, maybe he has some fear about like the sort of potential curse that's on his family, but I'm not sure that he takes that serious, because I think they had the one event with the Fae killing his brother or sister or whoever it is. Sorry, I just thinking brother. I don't know why that keeps jumping to my mind. Killing our eldest sibling, and I don't think that he thinks that that means that his family is cursed. I think he's like, a weird thing happened and nobody wants to talk about it, and or nobody believes me about it. But I think he's learned enough not to talk about that with a lot of people after what his closest sibling has kind of become hostile to him about it. And because of the sort of more social aspects, that sort of social optics of being like, oh, by the way, we're talking about having seen Faye and being like, oh, well, one of our family members died because a Fae came into our house and did whatever to him. They're like, oh, you guys must be cursed, and we're gonna run you out of this village on a rail because we can't have that evil magic here. Can't be dealing with Fae. They're gonna steal all our kids and turn them into changelings and replace them with changelings and all sorts of weird stuff. All our milk will curdle, go sour, and all the sorts of weird stuff that get blamed on gremlins and goblins. So I think he's known enough not to bring that up, probably especially once he got into the priory and it's all like church all the time. I think he's not messing with that. All right, then we come to the last couple of questions, which are really, really important for character development, and they're basically they're kind of the same question, but they're not quite the same question. So number 6 is, I will immediately throw down if someone ... Where we finish that sentence. And 7 is, I would die to defend/protect ... And these are, we find out like what's important, like what are we willing to fight for, and what are we willing to die for. Not always the same thing. So what is the thing that he would throw down about? He would truly get into a fight with. Everything that we know about Oriole. What is the thing that's going to cause him to really just sock somebody? I kind of almost want it to be this one about his older sibling who is the exiled bodyguard. If somebody finds out about that, like, he'd probably be up in arms against it. Actually, against either one of those guys. Or gals, or who they are. And our pirate and bodyguard, so one's exiled and the other one's, kind of an infamous pirate. Or part of an infamous pirate crew. So if anybody speaks bad about their older siblings, he'd probably get pretty upset about it. Probably willing to throw a punch, even though it won't. I was about to say won't do him some good, but he's got a 14 strength. He can sock somebody pretty good. It's just somebody in a tavern, some drunk in a tavern who happens to know his name, or overhears him saying his name and puts 2 and 2 together, related to awful pirate or whatever they call him. Give him a little rapid punch to the face. The thing is like, disparaging your family is a very easy one to lean on, and I've done that for multiple. Certainly have done it for the current ranger character that I'm playing. That's one of his big things. It's pretty much like if you disparage his father, he's going to probably going to go sicko mode on you. He's not. He has a very complicated relationship with his parents as an only child. That one I have an only. That piece he's an only child. That's just very rare that I end up rolling that. So immediately throw down if someone. I feel like it really needs to be something about the Celestials that are in this case. Which might be it's kind of an easy go-to, but we're gonna say disparages is. I don't have the thing in front of me. I can't remember the god's name in this world. It's a homebrew god, so it starts with an E. We're just gonna say his. I'm gonna say disparages. The Sun Horse. That'll make it easy for me. And so basically, that'll make it easy. Like, I think he's willing to throw down for that. Again, because he's kind of a lazy cleric. I'm not sure he's willing to die or protect that thing. He's like, he'll get into, like, maybe a fist fight over it, but if, he's not going to stand up to a whole bunch of people who got a bunch of weapons on them and stuff. Be like, oh, hey, yeah, whatever you said is fine, actually. So what would he die to defend and protect? Again, another easy one is to lean on family. I'm thinking like an ideal, though. I mean, he's willing to go on this journey, find the Celestial. Yeah, because I think any of these close friends, family close friends, I think that's usually kind of a given, though. What would they die to defend or protect? I do think, because I think I'm building onto this character, and there was something I wanted to do in our first session, but I didn't really want to pull focus to do it, because I think that he's going to have this interesting. I guess relationship interaction, maybe interaction as being a sun elf and a light cleric between light. I think he's going to have some. Like a sun vision kind of thing. So I think he would die to defend or protect the light. I'm gonna put that down, and then I'm gonna put this in quotation marks. I'm like, I don't think that he knows exactly what that means. He knows exactly what that means. He doesn't know. He doesn't know exactly what that means. I think that's something that he's going to find out as I play the character, as I roleplay the character, is that there should be something, because I was thinking about the scene that I wanted to happen during that first session that I didn't get pulled away with. He goes through this section where I told you we fought like the twig blight things, and companions killed them. He did not attack them in any way. And then he's burning their corpses afterwards, and by himself. And so he's down in sort of the cellar, kind of burning up these corpses that were. He didn't start the fire. The fire was already on. He was just containing it and taking care of it as sort of that light cleric aspect. And I was like, I had this feeling that it's like, as he's just sort of like sitting there watching the fire, just caretaking it, that his pupils begin to like really dilate as he like stares into the fire, and then like the blacks of his eyes start to ripple with almost like a flame like flicker across his irises. He seems to be drawn into this fire and begins speaking in what is, because we decided with the DM that he was going to be able to speak Ignan, which is the elemental language of fire. I didn't note about that, so I don't think he knows exactly what this means yet. I think as somebody who has not taken their like archetype subclass yet, I think maybe once he gets to that point he'll know more about it. As a first level character, I don't think he knows what this is yet. But I think this is a good answer. So that is most of what I wanted to go over here for today. Is that I think we hit it up really good. We answered those questions, we went through the stuff. And so in the end, we did not end up with a 10-page backstory, but we also didn't end up with nothing. We have all this information, and we have our backstory questions that we answered. And now basically what I would do, my next step would be to take what I've got here and turn it into, like I said, we need to put the story aspect in backstory. Right now we have back information. We don't have a back story. At this point, I would take all this information and blend it up into sort of a cohesive little narrative, probably about a page, maybe two. And again, it doesn't need to be really in-depth about like making sure that we detail every single sibling. Like I'll send all this sibling information to my dungeon master as well. Just I want them to know here's the nuts and bolts information, the soup to nuts information, and then here's sort of like a narrative aspect. So in the last one I did from the last character that I did this for, that I actually wrote it in first person. He was talking about himself. Very interesting. Very much gave you a flavor as to sort of like how his mind works and things like that. I don't think I'll write in first person for Oriel. I think I'll be pretty standard third person. And then usually in that backstory, I'll come up with names for these characters that are going to be important and write them down along with some sort of like physical description usually, if that's important to the story. If not, then I don't do that. And then I'll have plenty of sort of like parentheses and stuff in there and be like, this is just an idea. If you want to take in any of this for my dungeon master, basically like comment notes within my own document. If you want to swap any of this or you want to make changes to this, let me know and we'll talk about it and be like, yes, I think that's better, or I understand why you want to change it that, or maybe they're like, I have an idea that we can use this guy from your backstory who you have down as like the local forester, as a bureaucrat. Like I actually have another bureaucrat that I think he could slip into that role. Can we change that? And I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. It can be a reeve or whatever, like an elderman. Like it doesn't matter to me. I was just writing stuff down, and so doing stuff like that, it gives. I'll create the stuff, then I'll send it off to the DM. The DM can take a look at it and change up things, take notes for themselves. Some of those notes, of course, they'll be like, I have ideas. But I can't tell you about them because I want you to find out as we play. I'll be like, cool. Yeah, just make a note that like you've changed this. It's not the same thing. And then when it comes up, you'll be able to tell me about it while we're playing if you don't want me to know beforehand, etc. But yeah, that's it. So this technically doesn't take very much time. Obviously it takes longer when I'm talking about it. But to sit down and like knock out these, 9 questions and just do a few rolls on the table. It gives us a really cool idea for a character. So now some of this character, we came into it building the character first, so I already knew some of the stuff. I already knew those ABCs. I knew that he was going to be a half-elf with the sign-off variety. I knew that he was going to have the background as the chorister. So I knew he was going to be like from a priory. And then knew that he was going to be a cleric and that he had gained the favor of a celestial being. We came up with that today. So I knew some of those things going in, and then we've kind of fleshed out the rest of what his home life kind of looked like. He was born at home, he has this middle-class upbringing, his father disappeared to an unknown fate. Randomly, we think that he disappeared while he was traveling. It gives us kind of a timeline, so, alright, born, boom, we're on the scene. Father disappears at some point, so born younger, we've got 7 older siblings in front of us. So when you think about that, you think that this oldest is at least probably 7 at that point, if more likely closer to like 9 or 10. And then once we get to the age where we kind of know what stuff's going on, and I think probably relatively early on is when Daddy Dearest went missing, and then I think there is later on is when the oldest goes missing. We know that they're maybe like 9-ish years older than us, so we know that we were probably what makes sense, like maybe 7 or something like that. That would make them about 15 or 16 when the oldest is visited by this fae and murdered in their sleep. And stuff changes for them because they're probably getting close at that point to taking over the family business. Definitely probably on apprentice track already, if they haven't already gone to journeyman status, becoming a goldsmith. And old enough that this one, our second oldest, is probably already could be or being looked at for apprenticeship. Let's put it that way. And then we get older, and then it's like, oh, this one kind of goes off and does their own thing, their apprenticeship, and then journeyman, and they are out of the house doing their own thing. And then this one, these two kind of are like, well, we're not going to inherit the family business. We always knew that when we were growing up. We were always told that, so we were off going to live our life and make our own fortunes. And one becomes a sailor and turns to potentially piracy. The other one was became a bodyguard and then got exiled for burglary, but we know it's probably a front for them being maybe romantically involved with a noble of some kind, whether that is a spouse or a child of somebody important. They have been sent away. And we have this one that's kind of become a local forester who's kind of just off doing their own thing. They're kind of indifferent to us. They're not super close to us, it seems like. Kind of moved on. Probably feel kind of a wash, like having lost the older siblings, and then newer siblings are kind of doing whatever, kind of off doing their own thing. One goes off to be an entertainer, following in these two's footprints. And then the one right above us is kind of this person who's become a laborer, who we have driven to hostility with our talk about, like, hey, I spent this time growing up. Obviously, you're the one closest to my age, so you're the only one that I've talked about what happened to our oldest sibling, and you're like, you can't tell people about this. You can't do. But now being a fully fledged adult and being like, this is the only person I could ever talk to about this, because my older sibling was like, you can't share this with anybody. Like, don't repeat this to anybody, because there's all these bad social things that will happen out of this, or people will think you're crazy, or think we're cursed, our family's cursed, or something like that. So don't do that. And so he could only talk to this person. This person's like so fed up with them about it that they're openly hostile about it, because now that they are alive and quite successful, if anybody catches any whiff of them being potentially linked to some sort of fae curse, even though it's wildly probably hearsay, like, yeah, things would go bad for them. Then we have us, our lovely Oriole. Then we've got our two younger siblings, which we determined that Oriole's not particularly close to. They both turned out to be quite selfish and or slightly evil, we think. As one as maybe an unscrupulous merchant, and the other one is an executioner and puts people to death for a living. Raised by a single mother in a small house, works 2 jobs with a few close friends, and lived an ordinary middle-class childhood. Yeah, so the background is, other than the thing that happened with our father and our eldest brother, relatively normal. I mean, obviously we've got a number of real, like, screw-ups in the family. Like, we're not a family of people. This one, there are 2 people in our family who are really just kind of holding, 3, I guess, people who are technically holding it down. Mother Dearest, our forester sibling, who's just kind of like checked out, and our one laborer, older sibling, neither of which particularly want to do anything with our character. and then mother we are on very friendly terms with. And then we said we have the oldest sibling dying. We go off to make our life with the church. Receive a tal harpa from a close friend at the priory. That's one of the ones we have down here. And then they left or we left. I think they left because I think it makes more sense for them to have left and then we get the brass orb right as we leave. So then they receive this tal harpa. So there's a friend that's out there somewhere. We assume is also a cleric or other sort type of religious person, but doesn't have to be. Could be a layman, could be a Templar, could be a who knows what. Could have been just a visiting merchant, could have been anybody. And we spent some time working a job. We got a little extra scratch, which I'll put in there. We had sort of figured out how to make some money in our job, which is very interesting. There's not a lot of ways as somebody at a priory to make a lot of pocket change. That's kind of usually like asceticism is kind of big in a lot of those. It's not big in others though. So it might be quite opulent, and who knows, maybe he's doing some under the table stuff. He might be might have scraped a little bit out of the tithes. He doesn't seem like he's probably above that. And then the last thing we received is this brass orb etched with strange runes that we don't know, and we believe is related to either the celestial that we are going after or the one that we already kind of know. So we have down here that brass orb is kind of the celestial Kirin, which I haven't confirmed with our DM whether that will or won't be the same one that's lost. Because once I have that, that'll give me some more information. Because I think it seems a little silly that our character would have run across 2 celestials. It makes more sense that I think like they came across one, but that one could be the one who sent him to maybe find a celestial he's never met before. Maybe they go after him because he can speak Ignan. And how does he speak Ignan? I will probably need to write that into my backstory as well. Like, why is this a thing that he knows? That he has developed? Who knows? It might be something that's like, was in some weird choral music or something. Picked up. As being a light cleric, it makes sense that maybe he goes for the element that creates light. So he read a bunch of that. Yeah. That's it. So yeah, basically I'll take all this information, then I'll turn it into a more narrative form. Which again should probably only be like a page and a half or something like that. It shouldn't be too long. But yeah, that's everything for the stream. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. This is always fun. Get to sit down and watch me type out a backstory. I might share when I complete it. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. And I'll need to get my DMs okay before I show that off, I think. That way they know everything that I'm sharing in any one of these streams. But I think for the character creation and all that stuff, that's pretty easy. Not be any issues there. But thanks for hanging out with me, guys. That's me, everything for the stream. May do some more streams during the week. I'm trying to figure stuff out, schedules, change stuff, and obviously you can see the lights have gone out a little bit here. So it's starting to get dark, so it's a good time to kind of break it off at this point. But thanks for hanging out. We'll jump back in. We'll plan to do our usual stream on Saturdays. And we may do some more during the week. We'll have to see how things were going. I said that I might stream on Sunday. That ended up not happening. What ended up happening is I went shopping and then I ate a big lunch of Japanese curry and then I fell asleep instead. For one of my days off, I just kind of snoozed. So, it happens. But we may do some more streams during the week. Again, like I've been meaning to get back and get that White Wolf stream going and doing the that over on Twitch. So we might do that later this week. We'll have to find out. Still trying to figure out some scheduling things that are still up in the mix. We'll figure it out. The easiest way to know when I'm going live is obviously to be subscribed here. You can also follow me over on Twitch if you want to see that stuff too. It's same name both places, Red Ragged Fiend, so you can check it out very easily. Or you can also follow me on Blue Sky or Twitter. Same thing there. If you want to, I try to do the notifications whenever I go live. I don't always get them done. You do try to usually throw something out if I'm going live with a link, and you can pick it up from there. But otherwise, have fun, guys. I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.